Hello, and welcome to Ask the Expert, the show where you can connect directly with the experts to get your questions answered live. So make sure to get your questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. Before we start, I have a few quick things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We ask that you be respectful to everyone, including our speaker. We want all Reactor sessions to be a place where everyone feels welcome. If you haven't already, please check in using our event check-in at aka.ms/reactor check-in with event ID 14559. I'm excited to introduce your host, Jeff Fritz, and today we're talking about highlights from the last week's .NET Conf. We're here to take your questions live, so please go ahead and put those into the chat. Take it away, Jeff.
Hello, there we go. My microphone was misbehaving again. I'm gonna have to switch mics. No? Yes. I've been having some fun with this mic over the last week, and it's been misbehaving. There we go. Hey there, friends. It's so good to see you again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are, whether you're watching us live or you're watching a recording. My name is Jeff Fritz, and I'm back again. Well, I joined you last week for .NET Conf. What a week! What a week for folks in the Microsoft developer ecosystem. Visual Studio 2022. It's released. It's available for you to use right now. .NET 6 released, available. You can download and use that right now to build apps on your favorite operating system, whether it's Linux, Mac, or Windows. Tremendous opportunities for folks there. And we've got preview versions of both Visual Studio and .NET 6 available for you as well that are going to get you features to be able to work with .NET MAUI, our new native development solution that's going to allow you to build applications that run natively on Windows, Mac OS, iOS, and Android. It is a huge time for developers everywhere to take advantage of all these opportunities. And if you're like me and you like Blazor, you can now take your favorite technology and build and work with it everywhere using Blazor Hybrid with .NET MAUI. It's in preview right now, but there's more coming in a bit. I see folks coming in over here in chat. So good to see you on Twitch. I see folks on YouTube. So good to see you. I even see a couple questions coming in. Yeah, I was having a little bit of a tech issue with that microphone. I thought I had it rewired and working properly, and it's still misbehaving on me. So I'll have to take care of that another time. So a couple things I want to make sure that we cover up front, that folks are aware of, and that we kind of set the stage for some of the questions and answer. I'm going to try and read all the questions that are coming in and get to them and respond to as many as possible here. But please understand, I'm not going to get to all of them. I am certainly reading everything that's coming through on both streaming platforms. I do want to make sure that you know that we have a question or two that came in over video. We're going to answer those as well. I got some feedback from folks on the .NET team that we're going to talk about. And I want to make sure that you know you can use everything that we're talking about right now live on your machine, on Azure with Visual Studio Code, wherever it is that you want to be productive building software, we've got you covered. So I see a couple of questions coming in already. And yes, that's right, Aaron. Superman colors today. If you're giving a presentation at a Microsoft conference and you're not wearing a red colored shirt, I mean, really, who are you? Usually it's a guy named Scott, but I figured we'd go this way today. Hello there. I see our friend and MVP Ed Charbonneau is hanging out in chat. Good to see you. And I see a question from Daniel that I think we can take right off the top here about Entity Framework 6. Is there a way to switch database first to code first in .NET Entity Framework version 6? Yes. So if you've been building database first, there are ways that you can use the command line to extract and generate all of your models from your database. Now, you can then turn it around and start building and generating code going the other way, connecting back in and using those same database resources. You just need to do that generate first from the web server, and it will from the database, I'm sorry, and then you can connect and start working with it in your code using the generated models and database context. There's just that turnover process. Should be real easy to do, and I believe we have an entry in the docs about that, or at least I remember seeing one. So let me see. Scrolling down here, I see Solomon on YouTube says, I have a lot of questions, especially about the roadmap of becoming a .NET developer. If you want to become a .NET developer, there we go. Thank you so much. I've got some producer friends helping me out here. If you want to become a .NET developer, and like I mentioned, it's a great time to start that journey. We have a bunch of resources for you on Microsoft Learn. There's also places that you can learn about all the different ways that you can use .NET, C#, F#, Visual Basic on every platform that's really out there that you would want to get engaged with, whether it's from very, very small IoT devices, maybe it's on a phone or a tablet, workstations to build desktop applications. Maybe you want to build things for the cloud. You want to build the next big supersized cloud service that's running out there. You can do all of that. We've got some great resources available for you at .net/learn. And you can go out there. You can find not .NET Conf.net at .net, .net, and you click on the Learn tab in there. And we've got videos, introductory videos out there for you. I didn't queue up the URL for that with my producer friends here, but we've got educational materials there, whether it's links off to the Learn modules. There we go. Thank you so much. See, we're operating on the fly here. I've got a crack team of producers helping me out here. So whether you want to learn from watching videos, you want to learn from looking at tutorials, Learn modules, there's even links out to LinkedIn Learning if you're a subscriber for that service. There's great materials over there from some amazing folks in the community that you can learn from. So as a .NET developer, as a growing .NET developer, you can go and check out all those things. We have interactive notebooks that you can use in Visual Studio Code that will allow you to interact with C# code, try things out without having to go install all kinds of compilers and things. Real easy to get started and run that live right there in your text editor, in your code editor on your machine. So I encourage you to check all of those things out. I'm going to continue scrolling through some of the questions here in chat. I see a question on YouTube from Suhas. Asking, is model first approach best for entity framework? Best is kind of a loaded term. When these types of questions that say, well, is this the best way to do something? The answer I'm 99% of the time going to tell you is depends. and I'm sorry to have to give that answer, but it's true. It depends on the situation of what application you're building. If you're building a brand new application, you don't have any database resources already, model first approach with entity framework is a great way to get started, because as you're building your application and you're figuring out, well, what is it I want to store in my database? Entity framework will help you create those tables, create those relationships, those queries that will allow you to store and interact with those objects. That's a tremendous resource to have. However, on the other side, if you have an existing application, an existing database out there, and you want to build some other way to interact with your existing data, well, then database first would be a good approach for you in that case. So there's different ways to approach the problem, and you need to choose the approach that best matches the way that you need to build your application. And I can't tell you how you need to build your application without knowing more and interacting with that. So thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it, Suhas. And if you have a question out there, please drop it into YouTube chat, Twitch chat. If you're on Learn TV, drop it into that chat as well, and we'll get those messages popped up here on the screen, and we can interact and answer those questions for you. Let me see here. The next question that I want to take a look at is on YouTube from, is it Madinir? saying my WebAssembly download size is about 8.4 meg. Oh my goodness, that's a lot. Couple things you can do. Now, when you're building just in development mode and you're not compiling, you haven't deployed yet, we don't add in the compression, tree shaking, the linking that's going to make WebAssembly interactions. This is, of course, this is working with Blazor, and Blazor is WebAssembly. It publishes your DLLs so that folks can download and interact with them in the browser, running .NET code live in the browser. And 8.4 meg is a lot. I'm not going to lie. That's a lot of code that you're asking folks to download. It's way too much. I'm suspecting that what you're seeing is you're in development mode and you haven't published yet. When you run the .NET publish commands, whether it's inside Visual Studio or it's at the command line, or maybe it's part of a GitHub Actions publication process, the .NET publish command will be called, and at that time, it should be compiling for release mode with a release configuration, doing tree shaking, and removing some of those extra DLLs that you don't need. Finally, we apply Brotli compression to all those DLLs so that we squeeze them down as small as possible. And I have a feeling when you run .NET Publish to run this, you are going to see that become significantly smaller that you'll be able to interact with. And I see one or two folks here saying, that's not much. 8.4, that's not a lot. It is. We want to try and get that down under 2 meg. 1 meg we think is about the sweet spot there that we want to get folks targeting. I see a question here on Twitch from Pen Shen. How do you migrate to .NET 6 from .NET 5? There it is. Thank you. So this is real easy to do because .NET 5 and .NET 6 are very closely related. When you look at the support configuration for how the versions of .NET are laid out, how we're forecasting the future, our roadmap, the odd number versions are what are called a current release, and the even numbered versions are going to be your long-term support release. So what you'll find is we'll do experiments and we'll try new things in the odd numbered releases like .NET 5, and we'll use the even numbered versions to harden those capabilities, improve performance, add small incremental changes to those that don't require you to do a rewrite. So Penshen, what I would tell you is if you go into your project file and where you see the version, the framework version defined as it's going to say net 5.0, change that to net 6. Go through your packages that you're referencing and update those to the .NET 6 versions. They'll typically be 6.0.0 versions for all of those packages that you might be referencing. Give it a shot, and without making any code changes, only changing those version numbers in your configuration file, you should get about 95, if not 100% there to running with .NET 6. And you might be like me after you do that update and look at it and go, that was a big performance improvement, because there's a lot of performance improvements that have happened under the covers that just make the code that you've already written faster. It's great stuff. Let me see here. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. I see a next question here from SJBTHFC2 on YouTube. Asking, can we use .NET MAUI Blazor apps for production now? So here's the thing. .NET MAUI is technically in a preview state. That means that support-wise, we do not support a version earlier than the current preview. The code is open source. It's available. You're welcome to go and try that in production. And there are some customers, there are some developers that have done that. However, when you do that, you are not going to receive production support from Microsoft. You're going to receive some support from developers to tell you whether some of the things that you're using work or don't work. But beyond that, we're not going to be able to help you. Where it's something that that you're going to be on your own with. However, if you are building something that you aren't planning to release for the next 6 months, you're not planning to release until about June. You want to start on a project that has a long runway. You're fine to go get started on that, but we would encourage you, make sure you upgrade to that production release. Be ready to patch and release as changes happen, because we don't want to, and we can't support all the individual versions of open source code that have been released as nightly builds, as preview builds. You are not going to get production support for those. But later in it sounds weird. Later in early 2022, in early 2022, when we predict, when we're looking at our roadmap saying .NET MAUI will be ready for production, you will receive production support. You will receive high quality support then, and it's something that we want to make sure you receive, because quality is very important to us. I have a question here on Learn TV, asking, what are the benefits to store data with cosmosDB versus a traditional SQL database? That's Kirilo. Is it Kirilo? I hope I pronounced that right. cosmosDB, this is more of an Azure question than a .NET 6 or Visual Studio question, but a good question. If you're using a traditional SQL database like Microsoft SQL Server, or maybe Postgres, when you think about open source databases, or MariaDB, when you're using those traditional relational databases, they're built for relationships, for rectangular table shapes. Every record has the same columns going across in their tables. And when you work with that, typically you have one node that you're dealing with. You have one machine that's running it. And there's a bit of configuration to set up so that you can get replication to other machines. It's very easy to do with Microsoft Azure. There's options out there, whether you're using MySQL or Postgres hosted by Microsoft Azure, to set up those other nodes. But it's something that you need to be aware of. And when you're building a relational database, you need to be concerned about for that transactional consistency. cosmosDB, on the other hand, is built from the get-go to be NoSQL compatible, capable, so you can build collections that are any shape you'd like. You can also build and have the ability to replicate and have that configured as a first-class feature to other data centers around the world. That's a key feature of Cosmos. No latency, and you have it deployed, and you can interact with those various deployments very easily, no matter where your application is. Replicate your application into multiple data centers, and you can interact with those local instances of cosmosDB very easily. So there's a little bit of a choice there. Cosmos, it behaves a little bit differently with how you want to structure and arrange your data. SQL databases like Microsoft SQL are very square, and you have lots of great reporting solutions also available for you to interact with using SQL databases. Tools like Power BI are available to work with both. Entity Framework works with both. It's your choice. Really, I think of whether I want that rectangular table structure first versus being able to do NoSQL and have kind of mismatched shaped records that I want to place into my database collections. I'm going to take one or two more questions over here from chat, and then we'll go to our video question. So thank you so much to our producers behind the scenes there that are keeping me online here with some of the questions that are coming in. Thank you so much to them. It'd be very difficult to run through this without their assistance. Let me see. Let's go to a question here on Twitch from Aaron Stanley King. Does the migration tool work for .NET 5 to .NET 6, or just from .NET Framework to .NET 6? Good question. So I believe Aaron's referring to the .NET Upgrade Assistant. There we go. The .NET Upgrade Assistant is designed to help folks get from .NET Framework to .NET 6. The upgrade from .NET 5 to .NET 6, like I mentioned in a previous question, should be very straightforward. Should be as easy as just updating the version numbers in your project files, and it should just migrate across. If you want to take advantage of some of the new features in .NET 6, you want to take advantage of some of the C# 10 updates, or perhaps the new features of the JSON serializer, you're going to need to write some code to do that. You won't get that update, those new features in use for free. But if you have an existing Windows Forms WPF application that's been built with .NET Framework 4.8, 4.7, you can use the Upgrade Assistant to update to .NET 6 very easily, and it's going to get you about 80 to 90% there. If you've written some unmanaged code, or you've written some code that uses a framework or a feature that isn't available in .NET 6, you're going to have to write a little bit of migration to make that happen. But we think you can be very successful and see significant performance improvements when you get to .NET 6. Last question before I go to the video question we have. Let me go to this one on YouTube from, is it Netsarolando? Rolando? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Asking, would you still recommend using stored procedures or directly using entity framework? This is another it depends question. There are times when you're writing code against a database that you're just doing your regular run-of-the-mill queries, read data from this table, insert records into that table, update a record. And for those, yeah, just use entity framework. When you're doing a more complex query, where you're doing some interesting filters and joins and trying to tease out some additional information, I look at if I need to join more than 2 tables together for a query in entity framework, or even in the database is where I'm going to move that type of interaction. If I'm looking at more than 2 tables, in my mind, I want that as a stored procedure. And the reason for that is because when it is a stored procedure, now I've handed off ownership of that query to my database administrator. And my database administrator, those folks, their responsibility is to make sure that my database runs fast and to tune queries and make sure that we're using the database optimally. So by handing off that layer of abstraction, that stored procedure, to those folks, they can get in there and apply some hints and keywords and change around the way the query runs so that it delivers to me and my application code a user interface, an interface that is that stored procedure that will always be the same and give me exactly the data I want. And those folks, my database administration team, my ops team, they can do all the things they need to make sure that our code runs great. And that's a great partnership that we can expect, and we can lean on to ensure our applications run well. All right. I think we have a video question that we want to go to next. And I have some answers from the folks on the team. So why don't we roll that question now?
Hi, my name is Veronica Kolesnikova. I'm Microsoft MVP in AI. First of all, I want to thank .NET Conf organizers and speakers. It was great. Thank you so much. I have a quick question for Bree and Luis from ML.NET team. I'm wondering where they were running their demo. Was it on Windows or Mac? And is it possible to run the same scenario on Linux, Mac, and Windows? And if it is possible, then I want to learn more about possible limitations. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that was Veronica. She was one of our speakers as part of .NET Conf, and she's asking, of course, about ML.NET, our machine learning language capabilities and tools that are available for .NET 5, .NET 6. So the demo she's referring was run on a Windows machine in Visual Studio. Now, it was technically running on an Android emulator on there, but the demo code is available on GitHub, and I can share a link to that. You know what? I'm going to grab this link that they sent over. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to drop it into private chat here because, wow, that's a really long URL. I'm going to see if we can. I should have shared that with our friends here, so we could have gotten it shortened up front. But we'll get that link shortened and shared out to the group. I'm sure there's elements in there that can be dropped out, but the demo should work on Linux and Mac as well. They haven't tried it. There's nothing that's constraining it from working. There are some limitations that are declared on ml.net when you run on Windows versus Mac and Linux, and those documentation points are available on the machine learning GitHub repo. So you can go out there and check that out and learn more if you're interested. Thank you so much, Veronica. Thank you so much. There we go. There's an AKAMS for you if you want to go check out that demo. Big thanks to Veronica for the question. And you're going to see we're going to try and do more of those in the Ask the Expert series. We're going to have calls for questions and try and encourage and have more of that type of interaction. We think that's kind of cool to help make these types of sessions a little bit more interactive and interesting. I'm going to go back to the Q&A over here, scrolling through. Let me go to some of the handles you folks have on Twitch are a lot of fun because it makes me say things like this. Let me go to the question on Twitch from Acid Bath 3322. I'm going to Acid Bath. Okay. No problem. We're going to check out this question from them. Hello, Mr. Fritz. Please, my friends just call me Fritz. No need for Mr. Has anything changed regarding SignalR as the go-to real-time client-server communication? Nothing significantly has changed. There's some performance updates in there. We've got some updates to the libraries that have happened. The compression was improved a little bit, but nothing significantly has changed. We think SignalR is a tremendous solution. Of course, you can use SignalR with Azure SignalR service to get replication, and you can set up that horizontal backplane with your application, so you can run your application anywhere, and you can connect up to 20,000 clients per instance of Azure SignalR service. When you scale that up, and if you turn on the maximum number of instances, you can have up to, I think it's 2 million people connected simultaneously to your Azure service. Now, that's a lot. I can't think of too many events, too many things that need 2 million folks connected to the same SignalR service. 20,000 is probably going to do it for most folks in one instance, but we think that's a fantastic service, and you're gonna see us continue to invest and help SignalR grow and really be the go-to real-time client-server communication. Thank you so much for the question there, Acid Bath 3322. Let me go to the next question I have here on YouTube is from TG, asking which file should we use to configure, as web.config is not available up front anymore. This is an interesting question because when you're building web applications with ASP.NET Core, you start with an appsettings.json configuration file. The folks had spoken some time ago, and the feedback from the community was we prefer to build and configure with appsettings.json, with JSON files or with environment variables, these types of things. The only time that you need a web config file is if you're going to be deploying your web application to run on Windows Internet Information Server, IIS. In that case, you probably shouldn't be directly editing web config to configure your application. You're still running appsettings.json. So we don't recommend that you make manual modifications to the web config file that we generate. It's set up to run and interact with the web server and hand off communication to the Kestrel service that runs as part of your web application. So I would recommend not configuring web config unless there are other HTTP modules, other handlers that you're trying to add into the mix that are unique to your configuration. At that point, I would configure the web config that is generated, or copy that and place it directly on your web server with your custom configuration. And when you deploy a new version of your application, don't include the web config that we generate as part of the publish process. But I would avoid that and put all of your application configuration settings either directly into appsettings.json, create them as environment variables on your web server, or even use a tool like Azure Key Vault so that you're extracting values from there and it doesn't touch your machine at all. None of that configuration resides on your web server. It's only in memory as it's running. Thank you so much for the question, TG. Really appreciate that. Let me go to a question here on Learn TV from George. George asks, how is .NET 6 more secure? So we've done a bunch of things to improve security, to improve capabilities. Of course, we have teams that are always testing and making sure that libraries are behaving properly, that we don't hit any kind of security bugs in those, and we patch and release those patches on a regular basis. We have improved the way that you can interact with and build authentication and authorization into web services, web applications. There's always updates that come with those as we discover and keep up with new ways, new techniques that are being used on the web to make web applications more secure. Of course, we've tuned and improved the way that memory is utilized, and we're encouraging folks to use more stack-based memory allocation, whether it's through using structs, it's through using record structs now are available, but using those tools, using those capabilities in the framework that release memory immediately. So you don't have extra data kind of laying around in memory that could be attacked and interacted with. So that while there aren't outwardly things that you can point to and say, oh my gosh, that's a security thing, there are under the covers things that are being done to reduce the attack footprint. So a colleague of mine, Barry Dorans, can help answer that question a little bit further if you want to know a little bit more specifics about what's going on under the covers there. There's a question here on Twitch from WQ Walter asking, does the installation of Visual Studio 2022 include the latest version of the .NET 6 SDK, or do you need to install it separately? It does come with the .NET 6 SDK. There are, of course, patches that will be released, will be updated. So if you're watching this video sometime later than November 2021, while it does come with the .NET 6 SDK, and we will patch and update the Visual Studio install so that it gets more and more recent versions of the SDK as they become available, you may need to patch and apply an update after the install is done. And that's fine. I think that's an acceptable consideration when you look at Visual Studio being updated every few months with a new set of features. When we think about the SDK being able to be released as quickly as possible, as soon as there's a patch necessary for, going back to the last question, for a security fix, you can install and maintain that separately from Visual Studio. So yes, it is updated. It should be delivering a proper version for you, but it's okay if you need to patch and apply updates to that. Next question I have on Twitch is this Pipestilk? Pipestilk? Okay, good to see you. Is there an easy way to add security to minimal APIs? Great question. And this is actually a question that led to one of the feature updates in C#10. In C#10, you can add attributes to your Lambda statements. And in minimal APIs with ASP.NET, we're setting up those map get and map post statements inside of our code. And I think there's a good post on the docs that I could bring up on that. And let me just ask over there to my my producer folks. okay, is it okay if we bring up a website? Let me know real quick there. I will go grab that real quick if we're good. Because I believe we can do this. I can show a sample there pretty quickly. What do we think? What do we think? Share my screen? Yeah, we're good for that. Fantastic. Let me grab that web page real quick. I want to make sure that I get right to this because it's a good question, and I want to make sure that we answer this appropriately. There it is. Yep. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm actually going to share a specific one. This one right here. There we go. And you should be seeing that any second now. So this is, I'm going to scroll all the way to the top here. Hit the home button, Fritz. It goes up to the top a lot faster. This is the minimal APIs overview on the docs website. And take a look over here on the sidebar. In this article, not only does it tell you, here's how to do a simple minimal API. And I love that syntax. Look at that, 4 lines of code, and you're able to return just the simple hello world. But over here on the sidebar, some of the other questions of, well, how do I do these other things with this are answered right away. So I'm going to jump right to authorization. And what they've done is they've added a policy that requires a specific claim. In this case, it's requiring the admin claim. And what they've done here is they've added, just like I was explaining, they've added that same authorize attribute that we're used to seeing. They've added that directly into the map get statement. So it jumps right into that syntax that we're used to seeing to authorize interactions with APIs or interactions with controllers, MVC controllers in ASP.NET Core. So I really appreciate what they've done here to add this capability when they spec'd this out. And they said, well, it'd be nice if we could maintain that same interaction. This wasn't a feature available in C#10. That wasn't valid syntax. So they actually enhanced the programming language to make that possible. Really great stuff. Thank you so much for the question. I'm going to ask that we take down my screen, go back to my screen, and I'm go back to just my camera because I don't want to inadvertently show the wrong screen here. I'm going to go back. Thank you so much. Appreciate that over there. So I hope that helps out there, Pipestoke. Check that out. It's out on the docs. And you can see more about all the different ways you can take minimal APIs and start adding in some of those other features that we're used to using when we build APIs. Hey there, Aztec Consulting, one of our friends on YouTube. I've seen at a number of our events. Let me go to this question on Twitch from Link B, asking, is WebAssembly always one output, or can you split them like Webpack does with large JavaScript files? One output. That's interesting. We don't typically output one file. You'll see us deliver. There we go. There's the question. You'll see when you use Blazor and you output for WebAssembly, your project, your WebAssembly project becomes one DLL, and all of the static assets for it are delivered outside of in a separate content location. But any of the libraries you're referencing, those are delivered as separate DLLs as well. But being able to split that one project, that one Blazor application, into multiple DLLs so you can effectively lazy load some of that, that's something that you can do by creating Razor class libraries and moving some of those user interface components into those various libraries. And it will then, it won't lazy load those libraries, but they'll be loaded separately from the main package. So then you'll be able to take advantage of some HTTP2 features like multiplexing, and it'll load all of those at the same time instead of trying to load one really big DLL at once. So not quite the same, but it can be done, and you need to put in a little bit of the legwork right now to make that happen. Thank you so much for the question. Vitaly on YouTube has a question. The next one up here. Will we ever officially support Blazor components, an officially supported Blazor component library? Currently, the existing ones are not production ready for serious applications. So the input elements are that we make available. They're pretty robust for what they're designed to do. They are, yes, simple input elements that come very much like the various default input elements you get when you build for HTML. There is a very rich ecosystem of vendors, open source projects out there that are building components that folks can use. We even made available our Fluent component library that folks can use if you want to build things that work with and look like our Fluent design. But as far as the team making our own component library, the feedback from the community, from the ecosystem is they've got that innovation down. Those folks are working on that, and you can go to some great component vendors like DevExpress, Component One, Progress, Sync Fusion, Infragistics, that if you want production quality component libraries, you want things that have all the bells and whistles and do really cool stuff, you can get high quality components from those folks. And there's open source communities out there that are building libraries as well. We think that that's a great way for the community to support itself, to build an ecosystem around making tools and features for Blazor that are going to help everybody without requiring things to all come from just Microsoft. And we think that's a very healthy thing for a community, for an ecosystem, for folks to be able to share and interact and have more organizations, more folks support those types of directives than just one organization. Thank you so much for that question. Really appreciate that, Down. No problem. Our folks, our production team is trying their best to keep up here, and they're doing a great job. I really appreciate their help. Let me see here. I'm going to go to, let me go to this next question from Learn TV. And the question here from George is, does ASP.NET have any features to scale down images for faster performance? I spend a lot of time resizing images. Does it support nanosecond statistics? Intel Tofino A6 now gives those stats. Okay, I feel like there's 2 or 3 questions all lumped in here. Does ASP.NET have a feature to scale down images? There was a package that was made available, a NuGet package, that would resize and generate thumbnails that was made by some folks on the team, and it wasn't officially supported. There are a number of folks in the community that do make that available, but they aren't Microsoft supported capabilities. It's a very simple interaction. I shouldn't have said that. It's an interaction that, when you look at some of the image libraries that are out there, is just a couple lines of code to write, and some folks have built some libraries that make that easier to do. I would encourage you to check some of those out there on nuget.org. I'm sure some folks in chat can refer some of those. You spend a lot of time resizing images. We think that we had a number of demos that we had together for interacting with Azure Queues, Azure Service Bus, that you can look in the past and you can find. It's just a couple lines of code where a file upload happens and it automatically does the resize using a queue or a service bus. Intel Tofino A6 gives nanosecond statistics. You will see statistics reported in, I'm not sure if it's all the way down to nanosecond, but you'll see those statistics reported with Azure App Insights. .NET Monitor can report statistics for you as well. I'm not sure about nanosecond precision though. When you're talking about that level of precision, I mean, .NET Monitor, .NET Benchmark can give you those nanosecond precisions, but when you're running in production, something faster than single-digit milliseconds is fast enough to me. I'm not sure that I'm looking for things running significantly faster. I see another question on Learn TV. Let me come back to that in just a second. Thank you so much for the question there, George. I want to scroll through and let's take a question. I see a question on YouTube from Raju. It's not a .NET question, but the name of my headphones, these are Audio-Technica BPHS1s, are the headphones that I'm using. Gustavo, that's an off-topic question. I'm going to refer you to the Azure pricing on that, and I'm not going to answer that question directly here about the database pricing. There's another question. Is there a list of breaking changes from .NET 5 to 6 on it? Yes, there is a list of breaking changes, but they're not breaking API-wise that most folks are going to see. But there is a list of breaking changes. You can find that, of course, on GitHub. And the MSDN isn't really a thing, docs, Microsoft.com, but you can find that on GitHub as well. I don't want to go too far into that question. Let me go to Daniel's question on YouTube, asking, if I have an existing project that works with a database-first approach, could I switch to a code-first approach? This is actually the same question you asked earlier, you know what? I'm not going to repeat the answer to that. I'm sorry. It was the exact same question. I did answer this earlier. Could I switch to code-first approach without creating a new project? Yes, you can. And there should be documentation on docs, Microsoft.com. Scrolling down here. Let me go to a question on YouTube from is it Conlay? Do I recommend using minimal APIs for enterprise businesses and systems? This is a good question. Minimal APIs are actually faster in raw performance than the same code running as an API controller. There's a series of abstractions that happen there that you just aren't going to run into, that you actually skip through and it runs faster because you're actually writing middleware. You're writing directly against the HTTP pipeline in ASP.NET Core. So do I recommend using it? If you can build your APIs using that, yes, I would definitely consider using it for building microservices where you've already got some of the business logic you need for that microservice sitting in another class somewhere, and you can hand that off to those other things. Absolutely. Minimal API is just an interface on top of your logic, whether it's all sitting in that one program CS file that comes in the templates, or you create a new class and hand off the interaction to that class happening somewhere else. That's okay. You're going to see that same performance benefit, and you're going to see that great organization capability for placing all your APIs really in one file, and maybe it hands off and those actual business logic reside in other files. We think that that's a great approach, and it's going to help you build better, faster APIs in the future. Thank you so much for the question, Con. Let me see. Was there another question? Let me go to this. I'll go to this question on Learn TV. I'm afraid I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Jeremy on Learn TV asks, how do I set up the beta access connector? I'm sorry, I need a little bit more context on that. Beta access connector for what? And that sounds like it's not a .NET or Visual Studio specific thing. I'm guessing you're asking beta access connector for something like Teams or SharePoint. And I'm sorry, I don't have expertise in those technologies. So it's a little bit off topic, and I would have to defer that question to somebody else. Drop me a line on Twitter with a little bit more context there, Jeremy, and I can help get you connected. I am C# Fritz on Twitter, and I'll see what I can do to help you get connected with an expert that'll answer that question. There's a question here on YouTube from, is that Madinir again? Can we use MAUI code for the same Blazor website? So the question here is about being able to reuse the same Blazor code between a .NET MAUI with Blazor application and a Blazor web application. And the answer is Yes. If you take your Blazor user interface, take your pages, your components, if you put that into a Razor class library, you will be able to reference and use that same class library both in your web application and in your .NET MAUI application. In this way now, you've got this exact same user interface interaction in both instances. That's a really great reuse of technology that hopefully makes you more productive and delivers better experience for your customers. Now, when I think about that, you may want to tune that Blazor interface that's being delivered with the .NET MAUI application so it takes advantage of some of the things that are possible when you're running natively on Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android. So you may want to put a little bit of an adjustment in there when it's being referenced in those locations, but you can reference it straight from both a web application and as a .NET MAUI native application. I'm taking a look at the time here. We have about 10 minutes left. Thank you so much, folks there. My producers, Ryan and Mel, are doing a great job helping us out here. Let me go to, I'm going to pass on that question from Learn TV. Can we do lightning? Can we do lightning round here and go with quick answers for folks for the last 10 minutes and just click through some of these? What do you think? Let's do this. On YouTube, Dries asks, is there an auto scale available for the Azure SignalR service? I don't believe there's an auto scale available, but it is easy enough to go there and drag the slider across and add more instances. But I don't think there's auto scale available. The last few times that we've used it, we've had to plan ahead and move it across, scale up a little bit further than what we expect, and sometimes scale it a little further. On YouTube, Bulat asks, I wonder how I can use launchsettings.json file as a configuration class implementing IConfiguration interface in Blazor WebAssembly, as there is no appsettings.json. Yes, there is on Blazor WebAssembly. You can load configuration from it. Take a look at putting a configuration file in your root folder, and there is a way to load that configuration inside of Blazor WebAssembly. You can absolutely do that, but you don't want to load launch settings.json. You want to put your configuration somewhere else. And when you are deploying that configuration, because when you're loading configuration on WebAssembly, it lives in the browser on your client's machine. So you need to deliver it in the browser. And that's why you're going to want to put it in the root folder. There is a way to do this. I don't know it off the top of my head. I've done it in a couple of my applications live on stream. If you can't find the docs on it, drop me a line and I'll grab that sample for you. C# Fritz on Twitter. Stanislavos asks, can I recommend a book for a beginner programmer in C#? I don't typically recommend books for learning C#, but there's a great new book coming out from my friend Phil Japixi on Apress. There's some great books from Packet Publishing talking about C#. But I would recommend you check out the Learn materials live online because they're interactive. There's interactive notebooks that you can download and run locally, and there's great videos that will teach you and walk through it. The books just go obsolete quicker than we expect. So those are the couple places that I would look, but I would definitely, my friend Phil Japixi has an amazing set of books that he's been updating with Apress, and I've got a reference and drop a shout out for Phil here. I'm going to skip down to Todd on YouTube. Todd asks, in a Blazor project, why are some files Razor and others cshtml? What's the difference? Our friend and ASP.NET program manager Damian Edwards had a really good explanation for this, and it's pretty good here. .cshtml files, yes, they are Razor, and they're rendered by the ASP.NET runtime, and it interprets, and it's really looking to generate and deliver HTML out of it. It's not looking at interactions within those components. Razor files are interactive. You're writing C# content in there that is being parsed and handled. cshtml is going to hand off the code so that a controller or a Razor page is parsing and doing the business logic with it, where the Razor files are standalone, and that's what's being handled by the Blazor runtime, whether it's on the server with Blazor server side, Blazor WebAssembly, or even in .NET MAUI. cshtml files are present in that same application because it's spinning up and defining, here's the content to render for ASP.NET that will host all of the Blazor runtime content. Taking a look here, 5 minutes to go. I want to pick up some speed here. Let's see how we go. Suhas asks, as a developer, how do you get a job at Microsoft? Careers.microsoft.com. Take a look there. You can find all kinds of engineering jobs. If you look for top secret, okay, if you look for, there's a hashtag DDJL. Those, if you look for that hashtag embedded in the job descriptions, those are jobs in DevDiv working on developer tools like Visual Studio, .NET, and the Azure toolkits. Hashtag DDJL. There it is, careersmicrosoft.com. They are on the ball here with those links. Thank you so much. The developer dad on Twitch asks, would you say that Blazor is production ready for enterprise tier web applications at this point? You betcha. Absolutely it is. We have a number of folks that do run it in production. In fact, you even saw, I forget the airline that's running it now in production. Our friend Dan Roth had his session, enterprise grade Blazor applications, during .NET Conf. Check out that video. He talks about some of those folks and shows some great tips for making your application enterprise ready. Scrolling down here, Walter asks on Twitch asks, did Visual Studio 2022 preview go from preview 4 back to preview 1, or am I getting it confused with Visual Studio 2019? No, you are correct. It did go back to preview 1 because we've now released it's Dev 17, right? Visual Studio 2022 is technically version 17. So the preview track reset now to preview 1 because it's 17.1, preview 1. So you're not getting preview versions for the 17.0 release. You're now getting preview versions for the 17.1 release. All right, scrolling down here. Arun asks, any official certifications going on for .NET 6? No, we don't have any certifications currently for .NET 6. Scrolling down further, that's the same. Folks are repeating questions here. You don't need to repeat your questions. I promise I'm reading all questions. Scrolling down, I'm looking for a good one here. Bulat on YouTube, scrolling all the way down. My goodness, this question was asked about 20 minutes ago. Can minimal APIs come along well with OData? Yes. Check out that same link in the docs, microsoft.com, for minimal APIs, and there is information there about how to use OData with minimal APIs. TG, the next question that came through on YouTube, asks, what is the replacement for WCF going forward since Web API does not offer the same security as WCF? We recommend gRPC for that, and that will help you out. I'm getting cotton mouth here. 1 second. All right. Continuing on here. I can't answer questions about why features were chosen for this release and they've been delayed for the next. Let's go to this question on Twitch from Napalm684 asking, with Blazor being the shiny new thing, it actually came out 2 years ago, but Napalm684 asks, is the ASP.NET team still committed to adding features and capabilities to MVC? Yes, absolutely. They are. They're continuing to. And we're making sure that we deliver features for all the different ways that folks want to build applications. So we want to make sure that everybody gets the capability to build applications the way that they're comfortable. I'm scrolling through these much faster because we have 1 minute to go. I'm continuing to go through. Thank you for sharing links to some of the books. GE Digital, that's who it was. Thank you so much. They're using Blazor in production. Let me end with Tester Coder here on Twitch. Is it time to migrate to .NET MAUI or wait a bit? If your application is going to be going into production, if your roadmap says that you're going to be going into production in, let's say, May, June, maybe even April, May, June, I would consider migrating to .NET MAUI. Otherwise, wait a little bit. Keep maintaining it. Start working on it. I would not try to go into production. If you want full Microsoft support, I would try to wait to get into production until we get into that April, May, June timeframe when we think it's going to be released. That's when we're targeting it. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody from tuning in. There are so many questions here. Check out all the highlights from .NET Conf over on YouTube, youtube.com/.net. I think we have a link that we can share here. There it is, the on-demand videos. Those of you watching on Learn TV, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the content on Learn TV. If you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Twitch, have a good one. Check out some of the great videos on YouTube. Check out some of the other great shows coming up on Microsoft Developer and the Visual Studio channel live on Twitch. My name's Jeff Fritz, and I'll catch you later.